Hi there. Welcome to the Joy of Genealogy. If you've never seen my videos before, welcome. Thank you for watching this video. This channel, as people who've watched the videos before already know, is the channel that seeks to take those passages in scripture where so-and-so begets so-and-so begets so-and-so, stop, take the time to read them, figure out who these people are, and put them into context for you. I keep getting amazed, and I shouldn't be, at how few resources are actually out there. There's so much information on so many different things, but for some reason the genealogies still scare people. It's taken me a minute to get used to them, and I'm still learning. Gosh darn it if I'm not still learning, but it's been a fun ride. It took me a minute to post today's video because I wanted to figure out how I wanted to go about doing the genealogies in an order that made sense. Far be it for me to tell the Bible what to do. Please do not take me as saying that I know better what order these stories should go in. But when you're trying to follow the genealogy and it jumps chapters, it's a little hard to know how best to do this. Last video I did was on Keturah, which is Abraham's second wife. The reason I did Keturah in the order that I did first in terms of Abraham is because she's what I'm calling a deadline. I may have mentioned this in the last video, I can't remember, but this is an observation that I've made. Tends to be these people have in the line of Christ 3 lines. And usually what happens is it's one line that gets maybe a few names like Keturah, but kind of dies out, doesn't really do a whole lot as far as advancing the genealogical line of Christ. Then there's the firstborn, especially in Genesis, that's supposed to get the blessing of Christ, the blessing of being in the line of Christ, really, I should say. But something happens, some kind of sin, and then they get a second Adam, if you will. Jesus is called the second Adam in the New Testament because he is a better version. So what happens in Genesis a lot of times is you have the deadline, you have the firstborn line that gets cursed in some manner, and this happens over and over and over again, and I will try to point that out as often as I can. And then you have the actual line of Christ, which is a replacement for the original line of Christ. Today's video is no exception as we talk about Ishmael. Ishmael is technically Abraham's firstborn son. But I say all this up front to tell you that's kind of what I'm trying to do when I go through these videos, is I want to do the deadline, the curse line, and then the actual line of Christ. And it's not a hard and fast rule that there's always 3 or that it always works out like this, but it just seems to be something that I've noticed going through these videos. So I want to give just a little bit more backstory before I get into it. Bear with me. I tend to give a lot of pretext before I go into things. I'm sorry. Today's video is on Genesis. We'll do Genesis chapter 16 and 17. And then we'll do Genesis 25. A couple verses there. And then we'll cross-reference it with First Chronicles, like always. I intend to go back possibly and talk about Genesis chapter 12 and 13. I haven't really decided. Definitely going to talk about Genesis 14. And then I'll see what's in Genesis 15. So I'm trying to go in numerical order and chronological order, and it gets a little hard to do. But just know that we left off at Genesis 11, and now we're jumping all the way to 16 and 17, because again, it took me a long time to decide what order made the most sense. So we're going to be back and forth a little bit numerically. I'm trying to go chronologically in order as best I can. It's a little hard to know what is best to do, but that's why this video took so long, because I was trying to decide how I wanted to do it. So Keturah is what I'm calling the deadline. Ishmael is definitely the cursed line, if you will. You'll see why. So we'll start in Genesis 16. This is the story of Abram and Hagar's child. Per the usual, Hagar female, Hagar purple. They have Ishmael. So bear with me while we read a ton of scripture just to give you some context. Genesis 16. Now Sarai, Abraham's wife, bare him no children, and she had a handmaid, an Egyptian, whose name was Hagar. And Sarai said unto Abram, Behold, now the Lord hath restrained me from bearing. I pray thee, go in unto my maid, it may be that I may obtain children by her. And Abram hearkened unto the voice of Sarai. And Sarai, Abram's wife, took Hagar, her maid, the Egyptian, after Abraham had dwelt 10 years in the land of Canaan, and gave her to her husband Abram to be his wife. And he went in unto Hagar, and she conceived. And when she saw that she had conceived, her mistress was despised in her eyes. And Sarai said unto Abram, My wrong be upon thee. I have given my maid into thy bosom. And when she saw that she had conceived, I was despised in her eyes. The Lord judge between me and thee. And Abram said unto Sarai, Behold, thy maid is in thine hand. Do to her as it pleaseth thee. And when Sarai dealt hardly with her, she fled from her face. This is such a sad story, but it gets good. And the angel of the Lord found her by a fountain of water in the wilderness, by the fountain in the way of Shur. And he said, Hagar, Sarah's maid, whence comest thou? And whither wilt thou go? And she said, I flee from the face of my mistress Sarai. And the angel of the Lord said unto her, Return to thy mistress, and submit thyself unto her hands. And the angel of the Lord said unto her, I will multiply thy seed exceedingly, that it shall not be numbered for multitude. And the angel of the Lord said unto her, Behold, thou art with child, and shalt bear a son, and shalt call his name Ishmael, because the Lord hath heard thy affliction. Didn't plan on noting this, but I will since we're here. The Lord hath heard thy affliction. Verse 12. And he will be a wild man, and his name will be against every man, and every man's hand against him. And he shall dwell in the presence of all his brethren. And she called the name of the Lord that spake unto her, Thou God seest me. For she said, Have I also here looked after him that seeth me? Wherefore the well was called Beer-lahai-roi. Behold, it is between Kadesh and Bered. I cheated. And Hagar bare Abram a son, and Abram called his son's name, which Hagar bare, Ishmael. And Abram was 86 years old when Hagar bare Ishmael to Abram. There's a little bit of backstory on how Ishmael was born. I'm going to jump into 17. I had started out with the intention of reading all of 17. Do not get me wrong, I'm not saying anything bad about the Bible. It was just a lot to read. So basically, you have the top half, which is talking about the importance of circumcision. I encourage you to read it. I'm not skipping it because it's boring. I'm skipping it because it's a little hard to put it into context. So I'm going to jump down to verse 15. Again, the verses 1 through 14, we're talking about circumcision. And God said unto Abraham, As for Sarai thy wife, thou shalt not call her Sarai, but Sarah shall her name be. And I will bless her, and give thee a son also of her. Yea, I will bless her, and she shall be a mother of nations. Kings of people shall be of her. Then Abraham fell upon his face and laughed, and said in his heart, Shall a child be born unto him that is 100 years old? And shall Sarai that is 90 years old bear? And Abraham said unto God, Oh, that Ishmael might live before thee. And God said, Sarai thy wife shall bear thee a son indeed, and thou shalt call his name Isaac, and I will establish my covenant with him for an everlasting covenant, and with his seed after him. And as for Ishmael, I have heard thee. Behold, I have blessed him, and will make him fruitful, and will multiply him exceedingly. 12 princes shall he beget, and I will make him a great nation. But my covenant will I establish with Isaac, which Sarah shall bear unto thee, at this set time in the next year. And he left off talking with him, and God went up from Abraham. And Abraham took Ishmael his son, and all that were born in his house, and all that were brought with his money, every male among the men of Abraham's house, and circumcised the flesh of his foreskin in the selfsame day, as God had said unto him. And Abraham was 90 years old and 9 when he was circumcised in the flesh of his foreskin. And Ishmael his son was 13 years old when he was circumcised in the flesh of his foreskin. In the selfsame day was Abraham circumcised, and Ishmael his son, and all the men of his house, born in the house, and bought with the money of the stranger, were circumcised with him. Again, I'm not skipping the first half because it's boring. I'm skipping the first half because it's basically talking about the importance of circumcision and how it's established. Circumcision is talked about a ton in the Bible in general, but it's established right here in Genesis 17, and then again it's talked about in the New Testament and kind of all over Scripture. It's even going to come back up again later when we talk about the 12 tribes of Israel. But for now, I just kind of wanted to read the second half so the video isn't a million years long. On to the genealogy, which is why I know you are all here. I like to treat the narratives the way a lot of people treat the genealogies, in that I'm trying to get to the genealogies and skip over the narratives. So a lot of people will skip the genealogies and talk about the narratives. I'm, again, trying to do the opposite. So if there's narratives, let's get through it so we can get to the names. Genesis 25 is the actual line of Ishmael. Genesis 25, verses 12 through 18. Now these are the generations of Ishmael, Abraham's son, whom Hagar the Egyptian, Sarah's handmaid, bare unto Abraham. And these are the names of the sons of Ishmael, by their names according to their generations. The firstborn of Ishmael, Nebajoth, and Kedar, Adbeel, Mibsam, Mishma, Duma, Massa, Adar, Tema, Jeter, Naphish, and Kedema. These are the 12 sons of Ishmael, and these are their names by their towns and by their castles, 12 princes, that was part of the promise, according to their nations. And these are the years of the life of Ishmael, 137 years, and he gave up the ghost and died and was gathered unto his people. And they dwelt from Havilah unto Shur, that is before Egypt, as thou goest towards Assyria, and he died in the presence of all his brethren. Guys, in Genesis 25, verse 17. Through the magic of editing, I made it a little different. As always, we are going to cross-reference this with First Chronicles. First Chronicles 1, 28 through 31. The sons of Abraham, Isaac, and Ishmael. And these are the generations. The firstborn of Ishmael, Nebaioth, then Kedar, Adbeel, Mibsam, Mishma, Duma, Massa, Adad. Thought maybe I made a typo. I didn't. Not this time. I make a lot of them. Tema, Jeter, Naphish, and Kedema. One other thing I want to note really quickly is Genesis 36, verse 3, and Bathsheba, Ishmael's daughter, sister of Nebaioth. I hate his name. I cannot say it. It's so hard to say. Nebaioth. It took me a long time to figure out how to say that one. I'm still cheating, and I can't repeat it. So don't think just because I can say it once, I can never say it again. But Again, the most important part of the joy of genealogy is recognizing names, not necessarily being able to pronounce them. So I want to make a note that Bathsheba marries Esau's descendants. Genesis 36, 3, and Genesis 28, verse 9. And as usual, we'll make her purple. Through the magic of editing, I have gone back and fixed this a little bit. Just want to point out very quickly that in Genesis 36, 3 and Genesis 28, 6, Esau's descendants intermarry with Ishmael's descendants. And per chapter 28, you can see when we get to it that his parents are not pleased, and that's partly why he does it in the first place. This is the line of Ishmael, which, as I've said before, is the curse line. We're not going to get into Isaac next time. I'm going to do, again, a little bit of different order to get to Isaac, to get to Jacob, to get to the 12 tribes. So we're almost through Genesis, which is exciting. Covered a ton of scripture, and I am going to keep going back and putting in as much of the chapters that we skipped as I possibly can. But sometimes the narrative doesn't add to the genealogy the way I want it to. So pardon me if we skip certain chapters. Please read the book of Genesis for yourself. Please do it. I encourage you to do so. It adds so much. It's such a great book. But for now, we're going to tackle the parts that you want to skip when you are reading the book of Genesis, and I'm going to encourage you not to do that either. Until next time, thank you so much for watching, and may God bless you.